Before we begin, let's just take a tiny joy moment together. Wherever you are right now, driving, walking, maybe sitting with a cup of tea, folding laundry, I invite you to pause for a breath. Inhale slowly, exhale gently. Now notice one small thing around you that feels good. Maybe it's the warmth of the room. Maybe it's the sound of your own breathing. A message you received today, a memory that makes you smile. It doesn't have to be big and it doesn't have to be perfect. Just something simple, something kind. Let yourself hold that for a moment because joy doesn't always arrive in fireworks. Sometimes it shows up in whispers. And today, we are choosing to listen. Jayné, can you share a tiny joy moment with us?
Yes, thank you so much for that opportunity. I think about a time recently where I was sharing memories of a loved one that has recently passed with an elder in our family. And it was just so beautiful to hear of the closed gaps that he was able to give. And it was just such a warmth to my spirit to really learn more about a loved one from a different perspective. And so I'm just grateful for family and for those times of just taking out those little small times to just connect and to learn more about your legacy and your background.
There's something really beautiful about having moments that connect us to each other and connect us to memories that we have and to people we hold dear. Those are very special joy moments.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Held with Joy. Held with Joy is a sacred and practical space where psychological well being, emotional health, and spiritual health meet. The place where we talk about gentle practices that help us live with intention, especially in challenging seasons. I'm your host, Kelly Holder, and my heart behind this podcast is simple. It's to remind you that joy is always available, even when life feels heavy, and sometimes, especially when life feels heavy. Today, I'm joined by a special guest. I'm honored that she would take time to share her stories and experiences with us. Jayné J. Johnson is a daughter. She's a wife, a mother, a friend, an attorney, and an advocate. She is an impact driven leader with policy experience in government and nonprofit spaces, whose work is centered on improving outcomes for people and communities through advocacy, collaboration, and the support of multidisciplinary teams. Well, I'm so glad that you are here. Yes.
No, thanks
Jan-
for having me, Kelly. I feel like I'm so grateful for this space. I'm grateful for you offering it. You radiate light and you're really reflect a level of excellence that I've always admired. And so it is such a privilege to be on and excited to share.
Yay. Well, I'm so glad you're here. We're just going to jump right into your story. So, first question, when you think about your life so far, what moments feel most defining in shaping who you are today, especially in your faith, your calling, and your understanding of joy?
I really think about some of the darkest moments were those that were most defining, and the brightest moments are those that are refueling. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I think, so for so long in my childhood, I moved around a lot and it felt very nomadic.
Okay.
My dad was chasing his dream of becoming a dentist. He had, was in the military twice. And so we
Wow.
moved in different spaces. And so for a long time, I really saw that to be a negative. And I realized that in many ways, that helped me to meet people. It really helped me, I think, in a lot of ways to understand my purpose of really seeing the common thread in people. I
Mm.
Before I was in high school, I had been to Korea and Japan. I had,
Wow.
lived in the South, lived in the West, lived in the Mid Atlantic, in the DC area. And so I see that time really to be a part of developing who I was. I see the same thing in law school. At one point, I just felt that I did not fit in any of the boxes. There were folks who wanted to go into big law, corporate law. There were folks who wanted to go, into prosecuting and defense. And I didn't find that I was falling into any of those boxes. And it was a time actually in school where I took a class around legislation. And it was really looking at the fact that laws are developed and really drafted by lawyers often in government. And it kind of just hit me like, wow, that's what policy is. And so if you're able to address issues in the drafting, often that helps on the back end. And so if you have an understanding of that too, you can see where you can problem solve through policies. And I started to see like, that's actually what I'm interested in. I didn't have an example or a mentor in that way. And so I had to find my way through that. But I see that now in feeling lost, I really found my why, that I didn't really resonate with some of those expected roots, but it was really something that, I had to discover on my own. So I find that often in those dark moments, often those are defining moments. And if you can lean in and remember how you were able to navigate through them in the past, you don't have to stay there and you can really be able to push through. So
Wow. What struck me about what you shared was the the ability to see where the light shines in some of the dark places, because it shines light on our path. But as you were talking about your experiences and your early upbringing, I just am wondering how much you've needed being able to understand different kinds of people from different kinds of places and having all of those early experiences shape you as a person who creates policy, because you're not just looking at it from one lens. You now have lived experiences of multiple lenses.
absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of each of our narratives is that they're layered. And often there's many common threads that we don't often see just if we kind of box each other in. But I've been able to see those common threads of mothers, of children, of folks who want more for themselves, of people who are standing on the shoulders of others, of those who've gone before them. And so that really helps me to really lean into the narrative that often you'll see a name on a page, you'll see an issue on a document, but there's a narrative there. And so I think being
Yeah.
able to recognize that we are all really collective narratives. And the beauty of it is that, our story didn't begin with us and we have something that we can still give to others through what we're doing today. And so I think that's a key part of my why and kind of, what drives me no matter where, the professional lens may take me or the route may take me, that I can still find that why.
Wow. I think that's absolutely beautiful how your life crafted together to allow you to be exactly where you are. I'm wondering, was there a season where joy felt distant or fragile to you? And what helped you find your way back?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm a lifelong learner of finding joy. I'm a X and O's kind of, completion wins and losses type of person, where when you really start to lean into those, you often have external forces that can kind of shape your level of happiness. And I had to really learn to dial back and find the through line of joy, because the joy isn't always going to be found in the circumstances. And that's still a ongoing process, I'll be honest, because that's not really in a lot of ways how I for so long was measuring contentment, in a sense, and had to realize that it's not, that really doesn't work that way. And so I'm retooling and kind of unlearning in a lot of ways, but I definitely have tapped into my faith to realize and recognize that my my joy has to come beyond my circumstances.
Mm. I think that's really, really powerful thing to say. I mean, that last statement, it it is it's a powerful statement. I don't mind. Do you mind? Can you just say that again?
Yeah, you have to find your joy beyond your circumstances. That joy has lies in a through line. That's something that has to come from within. So no matter what you're facing, you can still find joy.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Here's a question, like a practical question, an application question. You've worked in spaces where the needs are real and they're very urgent. How do you stay rooted in joy while supporting others, while having to do the work that can be really draining sometimes?
Absolutely. And you mentioned lived experiences, and I think that is something that stay connected to and continue, really to develop. In a lot of ways, you don't really arrive somewhere, so you're still, experiencing and gathering lived experiences. But often
Right.
I'm in spaces where, folks have not experienced food insecurity. I'm often in spaces where people are helping and working with folks where they don't really have a connection to the work. And so often just allowing people to be seen and to know that they're heard for me is often an important part. And so often that requires coming kind of beyond the walls. I think often there, when you're making policy, sometimes you're in government spaces or you're in nonprofit spaces and you're not necessarily in the community. And so for me, it's really important. Faith-based work that I'm a part of, that's a continuum, and just even a part of my work of really trying to hear from people, because often people have the answer. They're
Yeah.
experiencing the issue. And so often we want to project an answer that doesn't really respond to their issues. And so I think it's such an important part of really being able to listen and to work with and hear from, so that folks can really be, their voice can be heard and they can really voice the change that they want to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It strikes me as a psychologist that your ability to really hear from others and allow people to hear their voice. I'm just wondering how much that might be connected to your faith and your ability to know that God hears from you. You know that you've already received that kind of listening, so you're able to give that kind of listening. I'm just wondering if there's any connection there.
Absolutely. I really find that you have to surrender. And I believe in my, as part of my faith, that it requires you to surrender yourself and to really hear from and know that if you believe in God and that you believe that He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, that although circumstances may be changing, that you may find yourself in a situation that you haven't seen before, that you're dealing with a professional dilemma that you've not encountered, that you do have a source of wisdom, that you do have a source of security and of steady, because He's for you. And so,
Yeah.
in times where it feels dark, I remember scripture: weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I know that He's been faithful, and I can look back. And I think that's sometimes something that I've had to be intentional about too, is remembering. Is I've
Mm.
been in circumstances like this before, and He's brought me through. I have given the situation and said, this is too big for me. And I've been given guidance. And so I can, tap back to those times. But often it takes you, I think, as you're, really guiding us, to be still, to
Yeah.
find places of quiet. Outdoors are great for me. I was, even as we were talking about our joy moment, I think about the fact that this week I made it to my favorite fitness class. And that was something that was really a joy moment for me, because
Yeah.
it really gave me energy back. And it was a win, of just like, okay, I did what I wanted to do, and my body is better for it. And so I feel like, those are spaces too where you want to have the collective of just really remembering, tapping into the things that have been beneficial for you, and just kind of leaning in there.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All of that is so beautiful. I'm hoping that folks are really taking this in. Because I'm hoping that we'll have listeners of all kinds and all ages. I'm wondering if you could sit with your younger self for a moment. What would you want her to know about her worth, her voice, and her future? What would you share?
I it's interesting, as I have a daughter too. So as I think about that, I even try to think about what I want her to see that I didn't see at her age. And that one, you are you are where you should be. I think
Yeah.
often we're looking ahead, we're looking behind, we're looking to the side, but you're where you should be. And so just lean into where you are, that it's working. It's working out, that your purpose, your drive, your goals, they are coming together. I would also say, I didn't do this early on, but I think it's really helpful. Often when you're making progress, you don't have to. I had a friend I saw post to say, you're making progress, you're striving for progress, not perfection. And so,
Yeah.
when you keep moving forward, you're making progress. Sometimes even when it does, you don't see it. And even as part of my faith, I feel that you believe in a God that sees around the corners. So keep trusting, keep holding, because He sees what you don't see. And your voice matters. Your voice should be heard, and your future is held by God and by your faith. And so he wants you to prosper. He has a hope and a future for you. And so if you're connecting to him, that will strengthen you, that will give you the light that you need. And support is okay.
Yeah.
Support is a strength. When you know that you need support, that actually is a sign of strength and not of weakness. And so I find, whether it's going to a fitness class, a support group, a counselor, when we find places where we need support, that we should lean in there. And I think sometimes we want to do it on our own, especially I found when I was younger, often not necessarily looking for mentors, looking for guidance, but that is something people have already seen what you've seen in some places. And so if you can find, learn
Yeah.
from their lessons learned, mentorship is important. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, leaning into support.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, for someone who's listening who might feel tired or discouraged, maybe even disconnected from joy, what would you say to them today?
Give yourself grace.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes, give yourself grace. And you really are guiding us to look for those sparks of joy. I was saying that I found it, just even in talking with a loved one, of just being able to learn from the story and feel the strength that came from understanding what adversity and things, our family had overcome, and the past that they had made from moving from the Midwest to the West. And, so many just inspirations and gems that came from that journey. But that just was a spark of joy. But you can find a spark of joy in a walk. You can find a spark of joy sometimes in just remembering your wins. Sometimes I think,
Yeah.
when we're in dark places, it just feels so heavy. But I
Mm-hmm.
find that thinking back to the wins, to the last open door, the last situation
Yeah.
that worked out better than expected, and answered prayer. Um, those are places where I find those sparks of joy and the encouragement to keep moving forward.
Oh my goodness, those were so good. Thank you so much for just being here and spending the time with us today.
Oh, Kelly, thanks so much for having me. I'm grateful for this space. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And for everyone listening, I just want to remind you through it all, we are reminded that joy is always available in every season and in every experience. Sometimes it doesn't come easily. In fact, most times it doesn't. And it doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's strength, sometimes it's rest, sometimes it's found in community and connection. Sometimes it's simply just making it through the day. But it's here, and today, if you're listening and you're having trouble reaching it, if it feels far away or buried underneath everything you're carrying, please remember this: you are seen, you are valued, you matter, and you are held with joy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself. All right? Bye, everyone.
Hey friends, do you need a bit more joy? Held with Joy Live is on Wednesdays from 7:30 to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come just as you are. We look forward to seeing you there.